Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Greeting of peace to all of you from Rome. My name is Tebaldo Vinciguerra. I am an official of the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. With a political science background and a special passion for water-related issues, I've been serving the Holy See since 2011. Warm welcome to all of you, dear speakers and participants, also on behalf of Oriana Romano from the OECD, since we work together to prepare this gathering. I will introduce her later. We are recording the webinar. It will be available on the OECD website later. This is a Zoom webinar format, so only panelists can take the floor, and we invite you to use the chat to share your ideas and to address panelists. You can also use the chat function to contact support team in case of technical difficulties. We have more than 200 registered participants, and we wish this webinar to be as interactive as possible. So we invite you to engage with us over the next hour and a half. Please use the chat function to say who you are, where you are from, and your organizations. You can ask questions to the panelists using the Q&A function. If you would like more background on the work of the Dicastery for promoting integral human development, you can visit our website. The team will also be sharing relevant links in the chat. This week started on Monday with World Water Day, which this year covered the theme of valuing water. On the one hand, the Dicastery organized 5 webinars inspired by our 2020 document Aqua Fons Vitae. This is the last one and the only one dedicated precisely to governance. On the other hand, this webinar is also the last of a series of events organized as part of the OECD Water Days. You can find the links of all these events which happened this week on the OECD webpage. You can also find more background on the OECD's work on water governance by clicking on the links in the chat. Our 2 organizations collaborated a few times in the past. Cardinal Turkson presented the encyclical letter Laudato Si in your Paris headquarters, and Secretary General Gurria visited several times the Vatican. We are happy to work once more together on water, on peace. Please, all of you, feel free to engage with us on Twitter at Vatican EHD and at OECD_local, and also using hashtag OECD Water Days and hashtag Aqua Fons Vitae. I have now the pleasure to introduce Cardinal Silvano Maria Tomasi. Originally a Scalabrian priest with a long experience in the Horn of Africa and 13 years as Apostolic Nuncio in Geneva, working with the international organizations. Former Secretary of the Pontifical Council for Justice and Peace, he has been recently created Cardinal by Pope Francis. He has a special interest for peace and disarmament and works very closely with the Order of Malta. Your Eminence, you have the floor. Please, Your Eminence.
It's not connected to Tebaldo.
Your Eminence, what happens with Cardinal Tomasi? Well, there must be a technical issue. I will immediately inform his secretariat. He will resume his speaking turn as soon as possible. Or apologize for these issues. I will go on and presenting our wonderful panelists. Just a few minutes of context. We know that SDG 6 is linked, is fundamental to the whole Agenda 2013. This said, the purpose of a webinar is to deepen the connection between water, SDG 6 and SDG 16. SDG 16 is dedicated to justice, peace, and strong institutions. It has been observed by many scholars that this is an important addition to the MDGs. The Millennium Goals didn't have this specific focus on institutions. COVID-19 pandemic is terrible and disruptive. All countries understood it. Interconnectedness became more obvious. We are one human family, yet we appear divided. Geopolitical struggles and conflicts, trade deadlocks, even inconsistent vaccines, and hesitant multilateral diplomacy. We are not acting as one human family. Yet, in such dire situation, maybe we have an opportunity to change, an opportunity to improve. Together, we may prepare for the future, but above all, we may shape the future together. Water is a concern for the whole human family. It can unite us. This is true if we speak about access to drinking water, wash, and also if we consider transboundary water cooperation and even basin level cooperation or the care for the oceans. Easy to say, yes, easy to say. Let's explore the links between water governance and peace with the help of our fabulous panelists. One of them, sadly, Sister Alessandra Smerilli, is not with us. Why? She has been appointed 2 days ago Undersecretary of this Dicastery by Pope Francis, and right now they are meeting together. She sends her apologies and her greetings. Very kindly, she solicited another expert in economics, who very kindly accepted. I will introduce him later. Now, without further delay, I have the honor to introduce Ms. Oriana Romano, Head of Unit Water Governance and Circular Economy, Centre for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities of the OECD. She came from the field of environmental economics. Engineer Olcay Enver has a long experience in water issues in the UN and in Turkey. He is the former Vice Chair of UN Water, now Professor in the Polytechnic School Environmental and Resource Management Program of Arizona State University. Professor Luigino Bruni, Professor of Political Economy at LUMSA University in Rome. He is the Project Coordinator of Economy of Communion and the Scientific Director of the ongoing initiative Economy of Francesco. Mr. Gidon Bromberg is an attorney and an environmental activist. He is the founder and the Israeli director of the organization Eco Peace Middle East. This organization has also a Jordanian director and a Palestinian director. Together, they work at the regional level for environmental advocacy. Ms. Martina Klimes, Water and Peace Advisor at the Stockholm International Water Institute. She holds a PhD in international relations and has over 14 years of experience working with dialogue facilitation, conflict resolutions, political and security analysis. Let me kindly remember to all panelists that for this first round, you have 5 minutes. My first question goes to Oriana Romano.
Tebaldo,
See?
the Cardinal is online.
So, thank you very much, Your Eminence. We will resume the questions after. Please, Your Eminence, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone.
Sì, sì, può parlare. È qui. Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning, Eminence. Good morning.
I am a bit late, but here I am. I am pleased to open this webinar dedicated to the fundamental issue of water, governance, and peace. I thank the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development for organizing it jointly with the Dicastery for promoting integral human development. And on behalf of our two organizations, I extend my greetings to all from Rome. A warm greeting to all of you who care about water and about peace. For the OSCD, this meeting closes a series of side events organized during the 2021 Water Days. For the Dicastery, it closes a series of 5 webinars inspired by Aqua Fons Vitae, a document published last year by the Dicastery and highlighting the importance and the necessity of access to water. Aqua Fons Vitae recalls the institutional value of water, in fact, and its value for peace. It also reiterates the importance of education, integrity, honesty, and sound governance, without which no project, no technology will bring significant improvement toward an equitable, inclusive, and sustainable development toward peace. There is no such thing as peace just for some, nor should we confuse silence or resignation or even the mere absence of harm holistics with peace. Peace is a gift from God, first of all, but a responsibility of each one of us as well. As the Compendium of the Social Doctrine of the Church explains, peace is built day after day in the pursuit of an order willed by God, and can flourish only when all recognize that everyone is responsible for promoting it. Peace is a value and a universal duty founded on a rational and moral order of society that has its roots in God Himself. Peace is founded on a correct understanding of the human person and requires the establishment of an order based on justice and charity. Peace is also the fruit of love. Peace is the fruit of justice. As the prophet Isaiah already said many centuries ago, understood in the broad sense as the respect for the equilibrium of every dimension of the human person. By its very nature, water makes any predatory, hoarding, free-rider behavior futile, dangerous, and inappropriate. The water of rivers, seas, and subsoil transcends border. It therefore calls for the building of bridges of habit for collaboration, sustainability, and mutual benefit. I remember when I was nuncio in Ethiopia, the problem raised by the building of a huge electric dam or a dam for electricity by Ethiopia, and the preoccupation of Egypt that the water of the Nile might not flow back in a regular way, therefore threatening the livelihood of Egypt. Water, if there is no communication, no dialogue, water can become a source of tension, and we need to avoid this as well. Where there is a rhetoric of war, it is good to develop a rhetoric of peace and hope. Where there is a rhetoric of ineffective bureaucracy and corruption, it is good to develop a rhetoric of commitment, accountability, transparency, contributory justice, and solidarity, and to have an open attitude for cooperation and dialogue. The encyclical published last autumn by Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti, all brothers and sisters, precisely teaches this, and I quote, when we speak of the need to care for our common home, our planet, we appeal to that spark of universal consciousness and mutual concern that may still be present in people's hearts. Those who enjoy a surplus of water but yet choose to conserve it for the sake of the greater human family have attained a moral stature that allows them to look beyond themselves and the group to which they belong. How marvelously human. The same attitude is demanded if we are to recognize the rights of all people. End of quote. At all levels of subsidiarity, from the single well to the municipality and to the basin of organization, water management as a community and as a group of neighboring communities, neighboring countries, in dialogue and collaboration can lead towards the strengthening of procedures, bonds of trust, and mutual esteem. Water, over time, becomes an issue of memory, of history, an institutional reference point. The wells, according to the Bible, have been created so that the deep and invisible groundwater can be shared among all, men and women, inhabitants and foreigners. Thus, water appears as an effective way of uniting the human family, and wells contribute to the realization of the principle of universal destination of the created goods, water being such a created and common good. The fourth chapter of the encyclical Laudato Si of 2015 is dedicated entirely to integrate ecology, and the fifth chapter to dialogue, so that this encyclical Pope Francis calls for a new dialogue about how we are shaping the future of our planet. We need a conversation which includes everyone, since the environmental challenge we are undergoing and its human roots concern and affect all of us. Undoubtedly, water is an issue of the utmost importance, immediately accessible in all cultures, all cosmovisions, in all legal systems. In this regard, Laudato Si, after describing the worrying state of our planet in a grip of a social and ecological crisis, Pope Francis wrote, the problem is that we still lack the culture needed to confront this crisis. We lack leadership capable of striking out on new paths and meeting the needs of the present with concern for all and without prejudice towards coming generations. The establishment of a legal framework which can set clear boundaries and ensure the protection of ecosystems has become indispensable. Peace, justice, and the preservation of creation are three absolutely interconnected themes which cannot be separated and treated individually. To build peace, we can start from what we have in common. We have a common human dignity, from which stem rights and duties, and we have a common home, the planet Earth. Water also is clearly an element that unites the entire human family, one generation after another. It can therefore be a very important factor for peace. Indeed, there are now many inspiring initiatives of hydro diplomacy. I wish you well in your work and pray that God will bless this meeting. They may produce some new insights and new proposals that are realistically applicable in the discussion of the use and the access to water for everyone. Have a nice meeting.
Thank you very much, Your Eminence, for this introduction. It has been a privilege having you with us. Many, many thanks. We will now resume our conversation and starting our first round of questions with Oriana Romano. Oriana Romano, please, what is your vision about governance and water? As you know, the last chapter of Aquafons Vitae is dedicated to integrity and good governance. And could you please also comment about the various levels of governance, so state, intermediary, local? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Tebaldo, and thank you again on behalf of the OECD Water Governance Program to the Dicastery for promoting integral human development, for organizing this webinar with us. It's a privilege and an honor to talk after the eminence Tomasi. His speech was very inspiring, and actually many times he highlighted the importance of water governance. So sound water governance in order to implement infrastructure and technologies that are equally important. Thank you for your question. I think it's very timely now that we are living in this very difficult time of the COVID-19 pandemic, which acted as a magnifying glass, highlighting the challenges that were already there in relation to water management and access to water services, but then now they become really an issue for those 3 billion people around the world that don't even have access to safe drinking water and sanitation, or to hygiene, to simply wash their hands as one of the preventing measures against the spread of the virus. And we know that by 2050, there will be many water-related challenges in terms of people living in water-stressed areas, like more than 40%, and that the global demand for water will raise up to 55% in order to face mega trends like demographic growth and also urbanization. And these challenges will be exacerbated by climate change. So managing water for all raise significant challenges for water governance of water resources. And this magnitude of challenges can be exacerbated by unfair competition and opaque decision making. So the fact that you mentioned integrity is very much key. There cannot be sustainable water policy without integrity. And water integrity refers to the application of values, of principles, of norms in the daily activities of actors and institutions involved in water management and water resources. And this means to be accountable also for delivering a policy outcome in a transparent way and achieving the expected result. So when there is no integrity, it means that there are more transaction costs. It means that appropriate investment are discouraged. It means that there is overprice of public procurement, which in turn may lead to infrastructure mismatches. As such, governance is key to achieve better water security, to achieve access to water services. And so beyond the what to do, it is important to focus on the why, on the how, and by whom. You mentioned different levels of government in your question, and indeed, water is a local issue with a global implication, and we know that water in many countries has been decentralized to subnational levels of government. But central and subnational levels of government need to coordinate in order to reduce institutional fragmentation and make sure that there are no overlaps and duplication. We carried out a few years ago a survey across 40 cities, and we found out that the central governments tend to have a prominent role in policy making and regulatory function, while local governments have more operative role in discharging key water services like drainage, drinking water supply. And so coordination is crucial to minimize overlaps and the gray areas. But through this work, we also find out that in many cases, there are still important governance gaps in terms of multi-level governance coordination, and in particular at subnational level, capacity gaps in terms of staff and managerial competencies, as well as a financial gap for more than 65% of those 40 cities that we interviewed. So to conclude, often water crises are governance crises. So we have to have a closer look at the conditions that can enable better water security and access to safe and quality drinking water and sanitation services. So in 2015, and you can see on the slide, the OECD Water Governance Program, along with the OECD Water Governance Initiative, which is a network of more than 100 members from the public, the private, and non-for-profit sector, as well as 40 countries from non-OECD and non-OECD areas. We define what are the 12 key dimensions that can enable more efficiency, effectiveness, and trust and engagement for better water governance. And indeed, clear roles and responsibilities and coordination across levels of government is the principal one, as you can see on the left-hand side of the wheel. And then there are several dimensions that go through the policy cycle of water in terms of decision-making and implementation, up to monitoring and evaluation, and passing through better capacity from a technical managerial point of view, but also stakeholder engagement. It is important, in fact, to promote dialogue and make sure that all the stakeholders that have a role to play to improve water security and access to water services are involved since the beginning of the policy making, and their input are well included also for the implementation. I will stop here for the time being, and I look forward to the discussion during this hour together. And thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, dear Oriana. We welcome Professor Luigino Bruni with us. Now we have a question for Olcay Unver, and then Professor Bruni will be the next. So, dear Olcay, in the last few years, In our overarching question for sustainability, nature-based solutions for water challenges became more and more popular in specialized documents and among scholars. The 2018 UN World Water Development Report was dedicated to nature-based solutions for water. What thanks to nature-based solutions? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Dicastery and OECD for this opportunity for me to express my thoughts on nature-based solutions, peace, and water governance. And I'd like to start by paying tribute to the late Wangari Maathai, the 2004 Nobel Peace Prize laureate. If we can put the slide on the screen, who devoted a lifetime to environmental activism, social justice, and women's rights. She, through the Green Belt movement she initiated, fought environmental degradation, empowered women, and provided livelihoods for tens of thousands, and inspired women and girls everywhere, and became hope for people fighting against injustice and degradation around the world. She was also the first African woman and first environmentalist to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. And the Nobel Prize statement praised her contribution to sustainable development, democracy, and peace, thus underlining the link between environmental conservation, peace, and democracy. The nature-based solutions use or mimic natural processes to enhance water availability, improve water quality, and reduce risks associated with water-related disasters and the impacts of climate change. They offer significant potential to address contemporary water management challenges across all sectors, particularly regarding sustainable agriculture and sustainable cities. They offer an excellent tool and a significant concrete policy option to make governance more responsive, more adaptive, and more inclusive by incorporating multiple stakeholders across multiple sectors, such as agriculture, urban management, disaster risk reduction, water and soil quality management, and sustainable natural resource management across landscape scale at various levels. In the water domain, nature-based solutions can help achieve three basic objectives for water management: enhancing the availability of water, improving its quality, and reducing water-related risks. So why are we not seeing a lot more nature-based solutions? When we look into the programs and projects around us involving these sectors and issues, currently, and for a long time, water management has been heavily dominated by traditional human-built, as we call gray, infrastructure, and the enormous potential for nature-based solutions has remained underutilized. The nature-based solutions can include green infrastructure that can substitute, augment, or work in parallel with gray infrastructure in a cost-effective manner. And this green infrastructure can substitute, augment, or work in parallel with human-built infrastructures, gray infrastructures, very efficiently. However, they, in addition to addressing issues and offering solutions, nature-based solutions can also have utility where no critical water problem or challenge may exist. For example, by delivering improved co-benefits of water resources management, or simply as an aesthetic choice, and where gains in productivity might be marginal. So the solutions with nature can support circular economies, promote greater resource productivity, can help reduce waste, avoid pollution, including through reuse and recycling. And nature-based solutions are restorative and regenerative by default, as opposed to the linear economies of our traditional solutions. In the agricultural sector, which is the major water user by far, a cornerstone of the recognized solutions is sustainable ecological intensification of food production, and nature-based solutions can play a key role through the introduction of ecosystem services in agricultural landscapes, for example, through improved soil and vegetation management. In the agricultural sector, they increase productivity in rain-fed systems, and as a result, family farming can benefit substantially in terms of increased livelihoods and reduced poverty reduction. In urban settlements, addressing availability through nature-based solutions is another huge potential through the regulation of water supply, through reforestation, construction of wetlands, new connections between rivers and floodplains, water harvesting, green spaces, and I can continue naming them, including green buildings, urban food gardens, etc. And that, in addition to the to regulating impacts, they also shorten food supply chains and translate further water and resource savings. Water-related risks and disasters, such as floods and droughts, can be addressed effectively through nature-based solutions, and sometimes in combination with built solutions, and sometimes in standalone programs and projects. So the green versus gray infrastructure debate has been going on, and largely misunderstood, because one is not necessarily the alternative to the other, and they can complement one another in solutions that address nature as well as the needs to build hard infrastructure. Until recently, the tools to make this happen were not largely available to the decision makers in terms of input to feasibility calculations, the project management processes, etc. And in very recent years, as recent as last year, the International Union for Conservation of Nature introduced the global standard for nature-based solutions. The European Green Deal, which is coming up, also promises as a game changer. And the policy recommendations by Food and Agriculture Organization, as recent as 2019, they all point out to the feasibility and applicability of nature-based solutions or formulations in order to deal with real issues. Most recently, actually as recent as 2 weeks ago, a decade-long work to find the best way to quantify the economic benefits of nature has come to fruition, and UN Statistical Commission accepted the ecosystem accounting framework, and now we have all the infrastructure that actors in the governance of water resources and other sectors can make use of. With this, I'll stop here and look forward to engaging later.
Thank you very much. We will, without further delay, mention another Nobel Prize. Again, a woman, Elinor Ostrom. She won a Nobel Prize in economics for her research on the commons and collaboration. She challenged the vision of selfish individuals, always leading to a tragedy of the commons. This said, the Catholic Church frequently asserts that water is a common good. Professor Luigino Bruni, thank you very much for joining our meeting with such a short delay invitation. You are an expert in economics. What does such assertion implies for you? Collaboration, mutual benefits, institutions, governance. Please, could you enlighten us on this topic? You have the word, Professor.
Can I share my screen? Because I'm not enabled to share. Okay. Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. I use my minutes for to say something about what Elinor Ostrom said about the water as a common good. First, just one word of introduction. The main problem of economics in dealing with commons and in general with the environment is that whereas in classical economics, political economy were dealing with three economic factors: land, capital, and labor. In the classical and contemporary economics, land disappeared. And in our graphs, in our models, just capital and labor remains as a, how do you say, anthropological, human, artificial creation. And then with these eclipses of land, economists have created their model in a vacuum of land and earth. And if economics does not see land, cannot see water. And then there is a challenge for economics in teaching economics at school, at university. We have to change the way of teaching economics, starting from common goods considered as the rule and treat the private goods as the exception. In particular, we have to start every single economics course today in that, because we are living in the era of the commons, to have to consider the commons as the rule and the private goods as the exception. Then you have to really upside down the way of teaching economics, starting with the tragedy of commons. You know, the tragedy of commons have been introduced by Arden in Science in '68, and the very famous paper discusses the case of commons. In particular, in his paper, there was a field, a mountain field, a common field for cattle, and then the thesis of the paper of Arden was, in the case of commons, that is, goods that we consume together, we tend to destroy them without intending it. There is no intention of to destroy the commons, but as a matter of fact, we end in destroying them. Why? The example of the common field in the mountains and where farmers can bring their cattle, the individual benefit from each farmer is +1, but the individual cost for each is -1 times n. N is the number of users, because the cost is divided by all the n users. Then the individual benefit is always greater than the individual cost. And then there is an excess in it is an overconsumption of the field. And then we today in economics, we describe this problem using an n players prisoner dilemma, as this very easy table, you see that the equilibrium of the game is 2-2, that is dominated by the cooperation equilibrium 3-3, that is limited our consumption together, both, but we are not able to reach the limit 3 each, and we end in a dominated, in a worst equilibrium, but is the only rational equilibrium of the game if we follow the individual standard individual rationality. Then the main the solution is we don't limit our consumption, our use of the field. All farmers will use too much field. The main message of Arden is market standard individual rationality is not able to manage commons. And then the question is, how is possible to save the field, to save the commons, included water? There are three complementary solutions. First is the most common and most famous solution is the social contract in the Hobbes or John Rawls, the contractarian solution. If we are able to create a system of pains, of punishments for people not respecting the limitation, -2 in this case, then the cooperation, the limitation is the only solution. But we have to be able to do that. That is not easy, because to create social contract for water in the world, you have to distinguish which kind of water, but now there is no time for that. But to create a global social contract for the governance of water is not easy, but is necessary, I think, to invest more in law, more in social contract. But there is also the second option, the so-called individual ethics, the epsilon in the table, the red one. If people get intrinsic rewards for respecting the commons, for limitation, because they consider the water as a commons and not just as a private commodity, then if this intrinsic reward is enough high, plus than 1 in this, with these numbers, the solution, the cooperative solution 3-3 is the new equilibrium of the game. Then individual ethics. Finally, the third option is the so-called we rationality. Our sister Alessandra Smeril is working is one of the leader scholars of we rationality. Her PhD is on that. The sister of the Vatican, of the Dicastery, which is we rationality in 2 words. The way of the frame of the problem, the frame of the challenge is to pass from individual payoff to social payoff. What counts will be not anymore my payoff, 2, 3, or 1 or 4, but the sum of payoff. And then 2 + 2, 4 is less than 3 + 3, but 2 + 2 is even less of 1 + 4. Then it's better to be only the only one than 0. And then the we rationality is another way of dealing with the implementation of a we thinking in economics. Then to conclude, of course, these 3 solutions, the global social contract, the individual ethics, and the frame of the problem, not anymore in terms of I, but in terms of we, are, I think, 3 interesting cultural issues for governing the commons, in particular water. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, dear professor, for this explanation, which is strongly connected to all our challenge of governance. Please, I will ask our colleagues from the OECD to share a poll with the audience. We will have a brief interactive round. Would like to hear from you. So, in your question, which water governance factor has the most potential to help achieve SDG 6 on water and sanitation for all and SDG 16 on peace? Please vote. We are curious to discover the results of the poll. So while the poll is being filled, now it is done. So we have meaningful stakeholder engagement is our first answer. So 28% meaningful stakeholder engagement, followed by improved transparency and integrity. This is quite enlightening, but obviously all the 5 answers are important. So we will keep in our hearts and in our mind this idea of meaningful. What means meaningful? Without further delay, I will now invite Mr. Gidon Bromberg, Israeli Director of EcoPeace Middle East. You will tell us about your work in favor of peace and encounter as an environmental activist, precisely around a river in a region rich for its history, for its culture, and for religions also. Please, would you say that water can be a factor of peace, peace for and through institutions, peace for and through people? Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Thank you for the question, and thank you to the organizers for organizing this conference. I think that much depends on us, of course, and the work of EcoPeace, which is truly unique because it's the only organization that exists in any field that brings together Palestinians, Jordanians, and Israelis together. And the river that you're referring to, of course, in our part of the world is perhaps the most famous river on earth, an iconic river called the River Jordan. And in the area that EcoPeace is focused, we're particularly concerned about the dire situation of the lower stretch of the Jordan River, from the Sea of Galilee down to the Dead Sea. And what's happened to the Jordan River is a terrible demise, much due to conflict, to competition over scarce water resources. We're in a semi-arid part of the world where conflict has very much led to those that can to simply grab as much water as they can at the expense of the riparian neighbor, and of course, to the complete demise of the natural ecosystem itself. So the Jordan River has seen about 95% of its waters diverted, about half by Israel and the other half by Syria and Jordan. And instead of fresh water, sadly, lots of sewage and agricultural runoff and fish pond waste have been emitted in its place. The 5% of the so-called liquid that's left in the river is not a holy mix at all of clean water in this river holy to Judaism, to Christianity, and to Islam. So despite the fact that the three Abrahamic faiths see the river as a holy river, conflict hasn't led to cooperation and sustainable management of the river. And this is where the work of EcoPeace has very much come in and tried to reverse the situation. Firstly, by focusing on research, understanding what is the level of the demise, moving from a blame game to a game or to a position of calling on the respective sides to take responsibility, both towards removing sewage, removing pollutants from the Holy River, as well as releasing at least some fresh water back to the river. If I can show the first slide, the work of EcoPeace is very much focused on this meaningful stakeholder engagement, as the poll highlighted just a moment ago. And the photo to the left shows Palestinian, Jordanian, and Israeli youth who have been working together. So we run programs in schools, out of school programs that create youth water trustees to learn about my water reality, my neighbor's water reality, and the interconnectedness of the two. And I love the photo because we're all the youth are holding onto the same rope with the understanding that, you know, if any one person lets go of the rope, we can all fall in. So that highlighting the message that we are completely dependent on each other. And it's this youth activity that has created stakeholder support for municipal leadership. And the photo on the right is a photo of a clean stretch of the River Jordan, just a kilometer south of where this photo was taken. The river, instead of 100 meters wide, becomes 4 meters wide. And it would be literally a health hazard to be standing in the river as the mayors who are in the photo that are currently, that are standing. And these are uniquely Palestinian, Jordanian, and Israeli mayors together. Not a pretty sight, there's some big bellies there, but they're standing, and in fact, they're about to jump into the river. It's called the Big Jump. Despite the fact that they're not best friends, the conflict continues, but because of the stakeholder engagement, they've come to understand that they're all losers, that the demise of the river has been at the expense of their respective populations, and they refuse to stay losers. So it's actually the young people that have been the real leaders, and they've created a situation of political will that's enabled the mayors to literally stand up and get wet together in the Jordan River, calling on the national governments and the international community to change policies and to promote cross-border cooperation towards the rehabilitation of the river. And it's these types of actions that have led to over $100 million worth of investments in starting to get the sewerage out of the Jordan River by building sewage treatment plants on the Palestinian side, on the Jordanian side, and on the Israeli side. And in 2014, for the first time in over 50 years, fresh water started to be released again from the Sea of Galilee into the lower Jordan, not at the rates that we would still like to see, but an important precedent. And in that sense, to answer the question, very much so. Water can be an avenue, an entry point for peace building if we engage in a meaningful way our communities to create political will, first and foremost through education, then through municipal leadership that then needs to translate to national governments. Next slide, please. That can take us even further. And for the next slide, please. We see that at EcoPeace and in the photo to the left, is Nadim Ajdarlani, the Palestinian director of EcoPeace, the president at the time of the UN Security Council from Germany in the center, Yana Abu Taleb, the Jordanian co-director, and myself. We're even invited to present this work at the UN Security Council. And we were pleased to get a response from both the Palestinian and Israeli ambassadors to the UN, supportive of this bottom-up community-based efforts. And the photo on the right is with the Finnish foreign minister, who is today championing the efforts to rehabilitate the Jordan River, but also to in support of a green-blue deal that EcoPeace recently launched, based on and inspired by the European Green Deal or the efforts also in the United States to fight climate change, with the understanding that climate change is about to make the situation so much worse. And therefore, the demise of the Jordan is a reflection of the demise of the river, should we not turn towards cooperation, both to clean up and to bring healthy waters back to the river, but also to be fairly shared between our populations, Palestinians, Jordanians, and Israelis together. So our message is very clear, it's very powerful, because our message is together as Palestinians, Jordanians, and Israelis, that issues like water cannot wait, and that working together is not a privilege, it's an absolute necessity if we are to see a river holy to half of humanity rehabilitated again, and if as people living in a very dry part of the world surviving together the challenges of climate change. So let me leave it there and bring it back to you, Tibaldo. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you for sharing these experiences, and thank you also for these mayors staying together in that river. About transboundary water issues, we will now call our representative from SIWI. Water clearly doesn't consider political borders. It is an ambiguous situation. A rival, a competitor, a rival often is the guy on the other river bank, rivale, because water often creates geographical barriers upon which political barriers build up. Yet each river is also a pretext, an occasion to create ties, to create a bridge. We call the Pope also a pontiff, and pontiff is precisely an ancient title to those creating ponte, bridges. So please, Martina, according to your experiences, can transboundary water action create peace?
Thank you very much for a very interesting question. And hello and good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here. And I would like to thank the organizers for putting this very interesting panel together and for inviting me to contribute to it on behalf of the Stockholm International Water Institute. You were asking me about questions related to peace and transboundary relations. But first, I would like us to take a very brief moment, and I would like to ask this rhetorical question: what is peace? It is a very loaded word for some, but peace is not only the absence of armed conflicts, and it's not only the absence of political tension. Peace is also for some the right to choose religion, to choose love, for some it is the right to go to work, to have access to livelihood, and to have their voice heard, and to contribute to management of public goods, including water. And this is very important to remember, that when we are talking about transboundary water relations, there are extremely important linkages to what's happening on the national and also on subnational level. So all this is very much interconnected. Water and peace, it's a discipline that draws on many other sectors. It's nothing that stands on its own, and the same goes for transboundary water relations. And in my brief intervention, I would like to show everyone how every sector and every professional can contribute to these processes, because we really need all the expertise. We need expertise on every level to contribute to finding solutions to very complex challenges. What we mean here is we would like to move to cooperation from seeing opportunities only through unilateral action. And when discussing water as a possible entry point for dialogues, I would like to break it to 3 different groups. First is when water is an incentive for cooperation. When we have a situation when, for example, 2 actors, and it can be 2 countries, have unresolved incompatibilities, unresolved grievances, and the need to discuss water can create opportunities for collaboration that can be sustained and that can go beyond just discussing the necessity about water management. So it's important to see that water can act as an entry point in situations that are far beyond water. For example, I would like to mention the famous Indus Treaty from 1960 that was a treaty. It's a treaty between Pakistan and India that was facilitated with the help of the World Bank. And this treaty has been sustained throughout all the years when the countries had many other difficulties. And it's important to see that this need to manage shared water resources creates precedents for the countries to find something tangible and something positive to cooperate on. It also brings opportunities for different groups of stakeholders to engage in these dialogues. We can bring in engineers, we can bring in scientists, we can really tap into different resources that can contribute to building relations beyond water. So this is the first point, when water serves as an incentive for cooperation. But we also do have another point when water is actually the source of incompatibility. And then in that case, we need to have a first political will. We need to first look into deeper issues before we can create an enabling environment for water. Here I would like to, for example, mention the example of Iraq and Iran. Iraq and Iran currently have a good cooperation on political and security issues, yet it's very difficult for these 2 countries to start a dialogue on shared waters and really discuss environmental challenges in the region. So this is the other opposite example of how we need to look into water issues in transboundary water management. The other example is the famous example, of course, of the Nile River. When if we look into the problem only from the technical point, it's fairly easy to find a solution for the management and operation of the infamous Gert Dam. But yet there are many unresolved political and historical grievances that are preventing this agreement on shared water issues to be possible at the moment. So important to remember this distinction. And the last is when we can use diplomacy, diplomatic tools, as a foundation for adaptive water governance. That's been already mentioned. It's very important for when we look into transboundary relations, it's still very important to build resilience, even on the national level. We all need to think, how can we save water resources? How can we also increase awareness among public about the need to be more to really focus on sustainable water management, to work against mismanagement of water resources, because this also affects how successful we can be on the transboundary level. So it's how can we use this diplomacy? Very important what we say is really the multi-track approach. When we look into how we can bring other actors, and we know in these complex processes, it is often the domain of diplomats, it is the domain of decision makers, but water also gives us the opportunity to bring other types of expertise and to bring other voices to be heard. And of course, this also gives a very important space for civil society. It gives very important space for scientists. It's very important what we see is to build these epistemic communities who can really build on creating this shared knowledge that can later lead to shared vision for a nation. And then where we can really talk about shared values and also understand that we all face the same risks that are coming from increased impacts of the climate change. And the very last point is about communication. It's very important, how do we communicate about these challenges? And in this, again, every sector can play a role. We have these quite complex technical reports. And then on the other side, we have decision makers who have to make very difficult decisions. And we need to find a way how we can get clear key messages from very complex technical narratives that the politicians can really take, and they can use it for creating political will, for creating shared vision for these regions that are suffering with water scarcity and political tensions. I'm happy to answer more questions about this in the next segment, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martina, for this very clear and very rich input to our discussion. We'll now continue with a second round for all panelists. All panelists will have the chance to demonstrate what it means to have clear key messages, since times have been reduced to 2 minutes each, please. 2 minutes, please, each. I ask the OECD technical team to help us in having good time control. Main questions here have been clearly on local, municipal, democracy, and also on values. What is meaningful? Why should I care for? Please, we will follow the same order, and I will then ask you to give your 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes comment on these points. Some kind of gift for all the participants. And if you want to use your time also to react to some input of other panelists, it is fine. Please, we will start with Oriana Romano. Oriana, per favore, hai la parola.
Grazie. Thank you, Tebaldo. Very briefly, I would like just to react and reflect on the meaningful stakeholder engagement that was also perceived as one of the priorities from the participants of this webinar today, and that also reflects the messages that the panelists shared in terms of the necessity of top-down and bottom-up approaches when it comes to taking decision, as Olcay mentioned, between type of nature-based infrastructure, or as Professor Bruni mentioned, to shift from an I to a we when it comes to water resources management, or when we look at the necessity of coordinating across levels of government, because water is local, but we know that the roles and responsibilities are shared across the levels of government. So when it comes to decision-making and implementation for water, and to have an understanding on how we deal with this trade-off that we mentioned, we have to, I think, also reflect on the fact that in many cases, there are many unheard voices when it comes to policy making. For example, in a study that we conducted at the OECD on stakeholder engagement for inclusive water governance, it emerged that women, youth, rural and urban poor, as well as indigenous communities, are not enough engaged into policy making when it comes to water policies, but also for other sectors, unfortunately. There are some obstacles in relation to this, which are related to a lack of political will or not clarity, lack of clarity on how to use the inputs provided by the stakeholders, also resistance to change. And one of the solutions consists in promoting institutional and legal framework for stakeholder engagement, mapping the stakeholders, especially those who are unheard, but they can play a role in a better implementation of water policies and better water security and access to water services, and also do an assessment and a monitoring of all this process. So there are many tools that we should put in place to improve stakeholder engagement and to make it meaningful.
Thank you very, very much. Please, Olja, you have the word.
Yes, nature-based solutions as a category is an excellent demonstration of this year's World Water Day theme, the values of water. And it represents all kinds of values, from spiritual to recreational to ecological, but also in terms of sheer dollars and profits. The disconnect between these so far has prevented nature-based solutions to be implemented on a much greater scale that they deserve. And now with the emerging frameworks, such as the valuation of ecosystem services, the global guidelines for nature-based solutions, and the upcoming the financial disclosures for nature-related risks for businesses, I am expecting the latter part of this year to be a year of nature-based solutions to move towards being mainstreamed on the agenda of not only governments at various levels, but also for businesses who are going to be more and more aware of the risks that interacting with nature without understanding or taking into account it poses for them. So I am very much optimistic and looking forward to both business communities and public sectors to work towards in a coordinated manner for more and more nature-based solutions.
Many, many thanks, Olja. I understand that Professor Luigino Bruni couldn't stay longer with us, so we wish him well. And I will now move to Gidon. Please, your comments on this.
Thank you. So I think that we need to try and speak to the very populations that we're trying to empower in their own language, and that means a very varied communication strategy. I think in the case of the Jordan River, our efforts was focused on the religious communities because the river is holy to half of humanity. So we worked with rabbis and with imams and with priests to highlight, to have their voices espoused loudly to broad communities, both in our own region and around the world, that the Jordan is a holy river. And if we see ourselves as spiritually connected, religiously followers, then we need to help raise awareness and call upon decision makers, both in our own communities, but also globally, beyond the Middle East area, of the importance of rehabilitating the river. And we found that to be very, very helpful. We were able to, in this manner, have thousands, tens of thousands of people sign a covenant calling for the rehabilitation of the river. The European Union, the European Parliament passed a resolution. The US Congress passed a resolution calling for the rehabilitation of the Jordan. So the global outreach from what is actually quite a small river and quite insignificant compared to the major rivers of the world. But because we focused on the unique religious aspect of the river, we're able to gain tremendous public attention. But it's not only from the religious side. You know, perhaps the most memorable story I have was trying to convince a local minister from one of our 3 countries to take leadership on the Jordan River. And we spent maybe an hour in his office on economics and showing that we're all losers and that the communities are losing from the demise of the river. But what actually turned the minister's mind around was a memory that he had of his father taking him down to the banks of the River Jordan to go fishing. And he suddenly said, wow, wouldn't it be remarkable if I could take my son down to the banks of the Jordan River to fish again, as my father had taken me, several decades earlier. And that was the turning point, that memory of simply fishing on the banks of the Jordan River that cannot take place today because the Jordan River is mined, it's fenced, and it's so polluted that you wouldn't want to eat any of the fish that you might be able to find in its waters. So I'm building on Martina's comments on communication. We need to communicate in the language that speaks to the stakeholders that we're trying to empower and activate in order to create that political will that's needed to manage and govern waters in a sustainable way.
Thank you very much for this call and for these examples. One brief comment from the Dicastery is that you do not cease to be a believer when you become a member of the parliament or a CAO. So believer all your life. So we really push also for the values to be experienced, to be lived at all the levels. Please, Martina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. I would like to build on again what was said about communication and mention a phenomena that is unfortunately also impacting water cooperation, and that is information influence campaigns or different types of disinformation. And at CV, we've been looking at this problem now for over 2 years. And we see that because the information that we need to communicate, it's so extremely complex. And often governments are reluctant to be transparent, to share data, to also address the upcoming challenges, because some of the projections are extremely daunting. So it leaves a lot of space for speculation. And this is a global phenomenon that now people choose to say, I don't trust science, which is quite bizarre. So we really need to focus on limiting the space for disinformation. And we see that it significantly impacts opportunities for water cooperation on transboundary level. We see different water negotiators being directly targeted by disinformation campaigns. We see many different actors who would like to derail certain processes, actively fueling misinformation, speculation. So I think that we all have the role to play in sharing information, in encouraging government actors to be more transparent, explaining the benefits of being more transparent, and really focusing on this phenomena of information influence campaigns and disinformation as one of the major threats to peace and security in our time. So that is one of my main messages and appeal, and I'm happy to discuss this further if we have time.
Thank you very much. Time is short. We have several questions in the chat box. Often they are related to peace, again to local and national levels. So certainly when a question starts by who is responsible for, the answer ideally is all of us together. This said, I will introduce Father Jostrom Kuretadam for his concluding remarks. Father Jostrom is a Salesian priest from Kerala. He's the coordinator of the Ecology and Creation Desk of the Dicastery. He is also professor of philosophy of science and director of an Institute of Social and Political Sciences in the Salesian Pontifical University in Rome. Dear Father, please, you have the floor. You have 4 minutes. 4 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Tebaldo. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. What a great webinar. To conclude the 5 webinars during this Water Week, Water Governance for Peace. We say in Latin, dulcis in fundum, the best comes last. And I think I won't be mistaken if I say that this was probably one of the best webinars of the entire week. So thank you very much. And I'm sure Tebaldo will be thanking the panelists, but also on behalf of me and the rest of the Dicastery, I would like to thank Tebaldo for having organized this webinar and the series of webinars. Thanks to Oriana also for the great collaboration. I have been following all the speeches this morning of our webinar. Very difficult to really sum up, all the insights that came up. Please allow me to offer 3 reflections that will very modestly try to synthesize what was said. First of all, about the relevance of the webinar title, Water Governance for Peace. And we saw from the interventions where there is good water governance, peace is possible. And especially where there is no good governance, peace, there is violence. And we saw it about the Middle East, Jordan. The Iran-Iraq case was mentioned. We see it in the chats. I saw it between Ethiopia and also Tomasi mentioned it, and Egypt. And we know the same thing also with China and India and North Africa. And surprisingly, only we had one positive case that was between India and Pakistan. And that's probably revealing that we have a long way to go on this path of water governance for peace. So that's the first reflection on the relevance. The second is, now what are the principles for water governance if you want to arrive at peace? We often speak of justice, peace, and integrity of creation. I think probably we need to give a little more space to the other 2 components. Peace is central, but we arrive at peace when we give maybe a little more space to justice. And justice is important. Ethics has to guide water governance, and then we are just to people. That so justice, ethical, all those values have to come in more if you really want to achieve peace. And the third, justice, peace. Third is integrity of creation. And I'm so happy it really came out very well, that we cannot think of water governance if we don't take into account the climate crisis, the ecosystem degradation, that the nature and water is part of the natural world. So the ecological components, considerations have to come much more probably into water governance. And the third and the final reflection is, what is the path ahead? And again, it came out very well. I think the path is all about partnership at 2 levels. Partnership of people. And interestingly, the poll that we had, that came first among the choices. All the answers are important, but that we create partnerships. And just mentioned, we are living in the era of the commons, that we need to move from I or my small tribe or community to the we. And partnership with everyone. Usually when we speak of governance, we think of governments. No, we need everyone. Women, indigenous communities, politicians, economists, scientists, everyone. So that is partnership of people. That's what democracy is all about. But also is partnership, the second component is partnership of values that we need to, around what it was so beautifully came out. There are spiritual values, there are cultural values, there are economic values, there are about flourishing of life, and so many, and all these values are poetic, and all these values are important. So let us walk forward, creating this partnership of people, and especially this partnership of the values that are most precious, most sacred to us as human beings. Once again, congratulations to the speakers, and thanks to all the participants for having joined us. And over back to you, Tebaldo, our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, dear Father. On behalf also of Oriana and Un grande grazie, caro Oriana. Allow me to thank Cardinal Tomasi, Olgiay Unver, Alessandra Smerilli for having accepted, and Luigino Bruni for replacing her, Gidon Bromberg, Martina Klimes, and all the technical and communication team of the OECD and of the Dicastery. This webinar has been recorded. It will be soon available on the OECD's website. It is impossible for me to give a summary of this so rich and so challenging and inspiring discussion. Yet, three very brief ideas. The first one, since we talk about institutions, is how we are preparing our lawyers and our judges. They will no longer be asked only to deal about quantity of water. My neighbor is pumping more water than me. Judges will increasingly have to work in complexity with very interconnected and transboundary issues. The second comment is please go in the encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti of Pope Francis and search for the word water. I repeat, the encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti, and look for the word water. It is mentioned only once. It is a beautiful paragraph about human attitudes and moral challenges. And the third comment, it is an alarm which resonated in many international fora, including in our document Aqua Fons Vitae. It is about the threats faced by human rights activists, conservationists, and environmental defenders in several countries. Often they're killed, threatened, criminalized, and so on. Only a few days ago, again, some women activists were killed. This is a humiliation for whatever has been discussed in this webinar. So again, thank you very much. Let us continue our discussion in the social media and certainly with some other appointment. Again, many, many blessings to all of you and thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.